170 pounds might be the most interesting weight class in the UFC right now, with over half of the ranked welterweights taking fights in the last month and a brand new champion. This division is on fire. So with that in mind, in today's video, we will be matching up every ranked UFC welterweight for their next fight, starting with the man at the top of the mountain, no pun intended, Islam Makhachev. For Islam's first title defense at his new weight class, there are 6 names I have been hearing discussed in the mainstream. That is Ilia Topuria, Kamaru Usman, Ian Gary, Carlos Prates, Shavkat Rakhmonov, and Michael Morales. Of these 6 names, I think there are 2 clear-cut options, and the other 4 can be cut out pretty easily. The beautiful thing about having a champion that has come from another weight class is that Islam Makhachev hasn't fought a single guy on this list of ranked contenders except for the former champ JDM, who he took the belt off of. In that same light, that is why I don't think an Ilia Topuria matchup makes any sort of sense for this division. Now, this would be an amazing fight. I'm not saying I don't want to see Ilia versus Islam. That's a true super fight. 2 stars, not just champions, but stars fighting each other in their primes. But this fight should have happened at 155 pounds before Islam moved up if you wanted to do it. Now you would be messing up 2 divisions, and you just can't risk the health of lightweight like that. The reason I say this, 145 already feels like it's got a bit of a paper champion in Volk, and I hate to say that. I love Volkanovski, but it's hard to say that he's the best 145er right now, assuming Ilia could still make the weight, right? And you would get the same situation with Ilia going up to 170. If he loses to Makhachev, now we don't feel like we have a real title holder at 155. 155 is in a great spot right now because we don't know if Ilia would beat Islam. Of the same sort of vibe, if you had Charles as champion right now, if he had beaten Topuria, that would feel like a bit of a paper champion because of how easily Islam defeated him. Ilia and Islam haven't fought, so it's still a question mark as to who you speculate would win that fight. Ilia also hasn't fought many of these guys because he came up from 145. Neither has Islam for the 170-pound division. So you'd be stalling out 2 divisions that are rich with contenders. So it just doesn't make sense. If they both continue to win, say they have, 3 title defenses each in their divisions, then make that super fight. That'd probably be one of the biggest fights of all time. That's not a Conor McGregor fight. But as it stands right now, you would be sacrificing so much for this fight. And I just don't think it's worth it, as cool as this fight would be. Next up, we've got the former king of this division. Now, I understand why we have heard Team Makhachev advocating for this fight. For one thing, Ali Abdelaziz, if I'm not mistaken, manages both of these fighters, so it would be very financially incentivized for him to get the double dip on this. It's a legacy name for Islam. In most people's mind, Kamaru is the 2nd best welterweight of all time. Kamaru is no doubt a first ballot Hall of Famer, no question, and he is a little bit past his prime, I would say. So it's a very enticing matchup for Islam. Why not take on a giant legacy name that's maybe a bit easier than some of these undefeated contenders? But like I just mentioned, you have undefeated contenders in Michael Morales and Shavkat Rakhmonov. You've got a hungry young contender in Ian Gary who only has 1 loss, who's on a win streak, and Kamaru Usman himself is only on a 1-fight win streak. It was a great win against Buckley. He showed that he does still have it, even if he's maybe not in his prime anymore. But I cannot justify giving Usman a title shot when he's 1-4 in his last 3 fights. Granted, that 3-fight loss streak, we have Khamzat on there. You can't hold that against Kamaru. It was up a weight class. Chimaev is a monster, and that was a competitive majority decision that he lost. If anything, that loss is almost a feather in Kamaru's hat in a weird way. So I'm not going to hold a loss up at 185 against him. So if you just look at his last 3 welterweight fights, you have a Buckley win and then 2 losses to Leon Edwards. Unlike the Chimaev fight, which is aging quite well, Leon is on a generational downward spiral right now.
Downward spiral, downward spiral.
So having 2 losses to him is not a great look. Before that, he was fighting Covington, who is somehow still in the rankings. We'll talk about that later. And then the Masvidal and the Burns title defenses. So Usman has done so much in this division. I do think he should have an easier path to a title opportunity than some of these younger guys, but 1 Buckley win, it would just be bad optics for him getting a title shot, and it would be holding up guys who deserve it more. If Islam had already fought through half of these contenders, if he had already cleared out a lot of the division, then you can give him a legacy fight. But given the state of the division, I don't think you should hold things up with an Usman legacy fight right now. This would almost feel like Jones fighting Miocic when there's an interim champion. Obviously, there's no interim champion here. There was one very clear-cut contender for Jones to fight, and he fought a 42-year-old legacy champion in Stipe Miocic. here. There's no interim champion, but there are multiple contenders who are above Usman in my mind for that title opportunity. So I think you give Kamaru a top 5 opponent, and if he can get that win, then we talk about the title shot. And I have got the perfect matchup for Usman, so stick around in this video to hear that. Next up, we've got the man who inspired my training regimen. My favorite welterweight, Carlos Prates. Now, I'd really like to see Prates get this belt eventually. I'm hoping that happens, and it would be great to see him get a title shot, but I've got to be fair here. You can't really give Prates a title shot when Ian Gary is on a 2-fight win streak, and that win streak includes Prates. Does Prates have more impressive victories? Yes, he is sliming people out, but the fact of the matter is he's on a 2-fight win streak, and that last loss came against a guy who hasn't ever fought for the title, who is more deserving, Ian the Gary. So we're going to give Prates a fun matchup to keep building the hype behind him so we can get more cool Instagram edits to Chief Keef's hate being sober, and hopefully we can build him up to a title shot. And on that note, let's talk about the most hated man in this division, Ian Gary. Now, objectively speaking, Ian Gary is pretty deserving of a title shot. In a lot of other weight classes, this would be clear cut. Ian Gary is 17-1 or 10-1 in the UFC, with his only loss coming to the undefeated Shavkat Rakhmonov. He just beat Belal Muhammad. He was Belal's first fight following his loss of that title. So that's a great win in 2025, even if it was a decision. If you look through Ian's resume, he's got a lot of this division on there. As I just said, he beat Belal, he's beaten Prates, he's beaten Jeff Neal, and D-Rod. That's 4 guys in the top 15, and he also has a win over the number 10th ranked middleweight MVP. So even if a lot of those wins were decisions, it's not surprising that people have started to advocate for an Ian Gary title opportunity. He has earned it. He has fought a lot of these contenders. And again, like I said, if this wasn't welterweight, if this was a more shallow division, he probably would have already had his title shot. Problem is that one loss that he has is to a guy who's still undefeated, who still hasn't fought for the title, Shavkat Rakhmonov. And I don't really see how you justify an Ian Gary title shot when you've still got Shavkat in the queue. So eliminating Gary from the list of potential matchups for Islam's first title defense, that leads us with the 2 clear options in my head. Now, this is going to come down to some personal preference here, but I think Michael Morales or Shavkat Rakhmonov should get the next title defense. Both of these fighters are a perfect 7-0 in the UFC and 19-0 undefeated as professional fighters. Looking through their resumes, we can make comparisons and determine who should be matched up with Islam for the next title opportunity. For Shavkat, his best win has to be Ian Gary. He won by decision. For Michael Morales, it's going to be that recent performance over Sean Brady. I do think Ian Gary is a slightly better name to have than Sean Brady on the resume, all things considered, but Morales was able to get a dominant finish where Shavkat went to a decision. With that said, that is the only time Shavkat has ever gone to a decision in his career, which is honestly insane. To go 18-0 with 18 finishes is crazy. I think a lot of people have forgotten the aura this guy had before the Gary fight and now the layoff due to injury. Up next for their second most prestigious wins, we've got a submission over Stephen Thompson for Shavkat and a TKO over Gilbert Burns for Michael Morales. Both of these guys won these fights in the way that you're supposed to. If you're fighting Stephen Thompson and trying to get a finish, you probably want to get a submission over him. If you're fighting Gilbert Burns, you probably aren't going to submit him. You're probably going to get it done on the feet. I give these about equal weight. Both guys were somewhat past their primes. Then we've got a submission for Shavkat over Jeff Neal versus a TKO over Neil Magny. Now, Neil Magny gets slept on. He's actually on a win streak right now, so I don't want to say that that's a trash win. That is a good win, but you've got to rate a Jeff Neal submission over a Neil Magny win, especially at the time that they happen. Then we have, of course, another Magny loss. We've got Shavkat's win over Neil Magny versus a decision win over Jake Matthews for Michael Morales. And in this case, I rate the Magny win over Jake Matthews by decision, especially considering Neil Magny recently beat Jake Matthews. I won't go through the rest of their UFC runs, but I will say all 3 of the early fights Shavkat got done with a finish, whereas Michael Morales got 2 out of 3 with a TKO and had 1 more decision. So putting the resumes against each other, I would give the edge to Shavkat. It's not a huge lead, but he got more finishes over slightly better names. However, Michael Morales has fought twice this year, and Shavkat hasn't fought since 2024. So in my mind, what it really comes down to is, are you holding the inactivity against Shavkat? If you want to see the guy who's been fighting recently, you go with Michael Morales. If you're understanding of the injuries and not holding that against him, you go with Shavkat. In my eyes, Shavkat already earned his title shot. It even says so on Wikipedia that it was a title eliminator against Ian Gary, and he didn't get that shot because he got injured. Does that mean we need to see him win another fight to earn it? I don't think so. I feel like there's a parallel here with Arman Tsarukyan's recent career and his fight against Dan Hooker. Now, Arman screwed up his own title shot, so the fact that they made him fight again I thought was reasonable, but he fought down the rankings and easily sliced through Dan Hooker. Do we really want to see Shavkat fight, I don't know, Gilbert Burns or Gabriel Bonfim? I mean, it would reestablish the hype, maybe get some of that aura going for the promotional aspect of the matchup, but I really think it's unnecessary. I think you give Shavkat Rakhmonov the title fight against Islam Makhachev. If you give it to Morales, I'm not mad at that either, but knowing that Islam is such a demon on the ground, I want to see a guy that I know has submission threat, a guy who actually can wrestle. And while I'm not saying Morales can't, he did just beat the dog piss out of a pure grappler in Sean Brady. We haven't seen him have to work as much on the ground as we have Shavkat. I want to see Shavkat finally fight for the title. So that's the first matchup. We've got Islam Makhachev's first title defense against Shavkat Rakhmonov. Next up, I think it's only fair that we match up Michael Morales, who in my mind is second most deserving of a title shot. I'd love to see him stay active considering he did not take any damage against Sean Brady. And why not match him up with the guy who is the third most deserving of a title opportunity, Ian Gary. Now, originally, I wanted to put him against Carlos Prates. Morales versus Prates would feed generations. I mean, that would be an insane fight. I would just love to see it happen. And having Ian Gary sit in the corner would be a natural place for him to go. But I think for determining the man to fight the winner of Makhachev versus Rakhmonov, you gotta do Ian Gary versus Michael Morales. You could put this high up on a pay-per-view, or in my mind, have it as a 5-round fight night main event in a crowded arena. Make a clear-cut next man up for the winner of the title fight. Now, I mentioned earlier that I have the perfect matchup for Kamaru Usman, and I really think I do, so hear me out on this one. The former champion, Jack Della Maddalena. I think this matchup marks all 3 boxes required to make a fight. It needs to make sense for both of the fighters, and it needs to make sense for the UFC from a promotional aspect. Fans need to be excited about it. It needs to not ruin a division. Now, Kamaru Usman has a limited number of fights left. Like I said, he is a legend in this sport already, and he is on the back half of his career. So if it's not going to be a title fight, it needs to be someone that adds to his legacy, someone who's going to boost his resume. He already fought down in the rankings once against Buckley. He's not going to fight another guy that isn't a legacy-adding win. And who better than the former champion, JDM? If Kamaru can beat JDM, especially with a finish when Islam went to decision, it is an easy call out for Kamaru to slot in for a title shot against Makhachev or whoever's holding the belt at that time. Beating a guy like Sean Brady probably doesn't get Kamaru a title shot, whereas beating JDM, the man that Islam beat to get that title, is a much better sell in my opinion. On the flip side, I think this is a very appealing matchup for JDM. This gives him an opportunity to show he has improved his wrestling. Remember, Kamaru can still wrestle. If y'all didn't see that Buckley fight, say what you will about this man's knees, he's still shooting takedowns like a champ. So JDM gets the chance to show, okay, I have improved my wrestling, and this is a big feather in the cap for him beating the second greatest welterweight of all time. This would be a great headliner for a fight night 5-round main event anywhere in Australia, or ideally, it could be the first fight night in Nigeria. I'm just saying the clock is ticking for how long we're going to have Izzy and Kamaru in the sport. I think if you can capitalize on this and do a fight night Nigeria, that would be crazy, but I know it's not likely, so put this in Perth or really anywhere in Australia. If you did want to put Izzy on the card with Usman, which I don't think they would, then you could do it in New Zealand. That would be pretty cool as well if you did a fight night Auckland. And now for the last man on our list of title contenders, we have Carlos Prates. Now, I thought a lot about this matchup. Now, I wouldn't be mad if we saw him matched up with Michael Morales. Like I said, that was my first thought for him, but I think it makes a bit more sense for Morales to fight Gary. So, what do you do with Prates? This one's a bit out of left field. Michael Venom Page. Tell me y'all don't want to see that fight. We've got the Muay Thai striking of Carlos Prates versus MVP. The entire problem with MVP matchups is that most of these strikers become wrestlers real quick when they fight MVP. And I know Carlos Prates would oblige in a striking battle. This would be an insane 3-round fight to put on the front end of any pay-per-view. And it's a matchup that has a limited amount of time left on it. MVP's pretty old. He's only got so many more years of having that elite speed. So I say book Carlos Prates versus MVP. Now, I know beating MVP probably wouldn't push Prates into title contention, but again, just because of how rich this weight class is with contenders, Prates is actually a bit far from that title despite some of these elite wins over guys like Leon Edwards and Jeff Neal. He's been knocking guys out. If you get finishes, I'm telling you, you don't have to get as many wins to get to a title shot. He has a massive fan base, which I am certainly a part of. So give him an opportunity to get a highlight reel over a guy like MVP and keep his name relevant. You know, he beats MVP, then he fights another top contender. That'd be a 4-fight win streak. If that's 4 KOs, he'll probably get his title shot then. But there's a lot of traffic in front of him in this queue. You really can't skip over Ian Gary. You can't skip over Shavkat or Morales. And you've got Ilia Topuria trying to get his way in. So I say give Prates the fun matchup against MVP. Beating MVP, especially by knockout, is a pretty special thing to do and would really add to the aura that is being cultivated right now by Carlos Prates. For MVP, this is a shot back into the welterweight rankings. He has been doing great things at middleweight, but guys, MVP is not a real middleweight. You can see it looking at him, and he has a great speed advantage over the guys at middleweight, but as soon as he gets matched up with a grappler at 185, I think it's going to be problems for him. So I think the side quest of 185 has been great. It's time to come back to his real weight class of 170 and establish, is he a top 10 guy against another pure striker in Carlos Prates. Book this fight for a pay-per-view, 3-round feature fight before the co-main event. Now moving on to the man who just got slimed out by Carlos Prates, you have Leon Edwards, the former champion who is now on a 3-fight losing streak. Probably going to need to fight down in the rankings, and from where he's at, number 9, I think there's a clear choice. Another man who is defeated by my boy Carlos Prates, and that is Jeff Neal. Jeff Neal is a striker, as is Leon, so I think this will make for a very fun matchup. Both guys have been knocked out brutally recently, so I think the timelines for when they should be coming back, getting in that cage, line up. This should not be a fight that is booked for January. This should be a while, let their brains recover. I would love to see this fight go down in Texas, considering Jeff Neal fights out of
Dallas.
Or you could do this back in the UK. So book that one, Leon Edwards versus Jeff Neal. Speaking of guys who got slimed out recently, we have the ever disappointing Sean Brady. Man, I don't know what was going on in that fight with Morales, and it's not to take away from Morales, he is a beast, but Sean Brady just did not look good in that fight. So I think he should fight down in the rankings, and I think the perfect matchup for him would be Joaquin Buckley. Look, if Sean Brady can't implement his grappling and take down Joaquin Buckley, he probably shouldn't be in the top 10. And I would love to see Joaquin Buckley get a chance to show that he has improved his wrestling since that Usman fight. You know, before losing to Kamaru, Joaquin was on a 6-fight win streak in the UFC welterweight division. So I don't think it's unreasonable to let him fight number 7 as he is currently number 10. I think there's an approachable path to victory for both fighters, so you should be able to get them to agree to this matchup. Now, Sean Brady probably needs some time off, so maybe Buckley will want to fight sooner than that. But as far as the matchup goes, I think this is a proof of who deserves to be in the top 10. Number 7 versus number 10. Can Buckley shuck off the wrestling of Brady? Can Brady actually survive on the feet for a minute and secure some takedowns? I think this is a great fight. Sean Brady versus Joaquin Buckley. And lastly, we've got the other contender that recently fought in this division, the former welterweight champion, Belal Muhammad. Belal is currently ranked number 5 and is on a 2-fight losing streak, with those 2 losses coming to JDM and Ian Gary, 2 men who are ranked within the top 5 of the division. These aren't terrible losses, they were both by decision, but it's probably time for him to fight a bit down in the rankings to see if he can bounce back. And I think I have the perfect matchup for Belal, the man who is inexplicably still ranked in 2025 despite having no ranked wins on his resume, Colby Chaos Covington. Now, why should Colby get a shot against the guy who's ranked number 5? Well, it's less about doing something nice for Colby and more about giving Belal an approachable matchup against a guy that he hates. There is actual beef for this fight. These dudes do not like each other, and for Colby, who is realistically never going to be near that title again, this would be a legacy fight against a former champion, so it might actually be one that he would accept. And on top of all that, you've got both of these fan bases strongly disliking the other fighter. I don't know a single person who likes both Belal and Colby. I do know some people that don't like either, but I don't know anyone who roots for Belal and Colby. It's one or the other, or maybe neither. Say what you will about the inactivity and the resume degradation of Colby Covington, but he is still a name in this division, and I think Belal would gladly take this fight. On the side of Covington, again, I don't see what matchup is more favorable for him in the sense of who he's getting on his resume potentially with a win. So unless Colby is just done fighting and is just rank squatting at this point, which very well might be the case, I think Belal and Colby would be an awesome matchup to have where you have two high-level wrestlers. Maybe it ends up just being a kickboxing fight. I know Belal would probably prefer to get his hands on him. I think this could end up looking like the Colby-Usman one, where you get a kickboxing fight between two wrestlers. And I think this fight would have a hilarious shit-talking session at a press conference. So please put this on a pay-per-view, not a fight night, and have these two on stage, ideally with some of these other welterweights, so we can get all the smack talk going. UFC press conferences have been so boring lately, and it's because they don't have guys that hate each other sitting about 20 feet away from one another. So put Belal and Colby on stage with other welterweights and let the fun ensue. I think it would be awesome to have Kamaru Usman on stage with Belal as well, considering the beef that they have. There is beef between some of these contenders in this division. Let's not let it go to waste. And that leaves us with three more ranked welterweights. We've got Gabriel Bonfim, who did recently have a spectacular knockout over Randy Brown, Gilbert Burns, who has not been looking so great as of late, and Daniel Rodriguez. So I'm going to say Gabriel Bonfim deserves an opportunity to get a big name on the resume, so we'll give him Gilbert Burns, and we will give D-Rod a fight outside of the rankings against Rinat Fakhretdinov. Now, Rinat, I think, is the most deserving fighter outside of the rankings for an opportunity in the rankings, and while D-Rod is on a win streak, he is a bit of a gatekeeper in this division. I don't mean that disrespectfully, just objectively. The guys who can beat D-Rod usually end up going on to do great things, and the guys who don't tend to make it into the rank. That is what a gatekeeper does, right? Rinat is 6-0 with one draw in his UFC run, and I think it's time for him to get his opportunity in the rankings. You know, he recently slimed out a very hyped prospect in Andreas Gustafsson in only 54 seconds, so I think it's deserved. Switching back now to Bonfim and Burns. Bonfim needs to get some names on the resume if he wants to start being a matchup that people care about within the top 10, as that is likely where he's headed. For Gilbert Burns, assuming he wants to keep fighting, you've got to fight either down or right around you. So I think getting the ranked Gabriel Bonfim is about as good as he could ask for at this point. So there it is, boys. We have matched up the entire welterweight division. I think these would be some amazing fights. I would love to see the UFC put some of these matchups on the same pay-per-views or fight nights. It's always great for press conferences to have guys from the same weight divisions, and if someone pulls out of, say, a title fight, you've got a backup built into that pay-per-view. So Dana, Hunter Campbell, obviously you watch my channel. Book these fights, please and thank you. And if you're new here, subscribe to my channel. Leave a comment below. Who do you think Islam should fight next? And who do you think would win each of these matchups? Let me know down below. And until next time, thanks for watching.
What we do here is go back.